The rise and fall of Númenor was written in the moment the island rose from the waves. Its people became legends, its cities unmatched, its fleet unstoppable. And yet, destiny was already moving quietly toward a single catastrophic choice. Númenor was a jewel in the middle of the Great Sea, its coasts lined with white towers and fertile plains, its forests deep and untamed, and its harbors filled with ships that could traverse any ocean. Blessed by the Valar, its people were taller, stronger, and longer lived than ordinary men, gifted with knowledge, skill, and the promise of prosperity beyond any mortal realm. They built grand cities, mastered navigation, and cultivated arts that rivaled even the Eldar. Yet this paradise was fragile. Should Númenor fall, it would mean not just the end of a kingdom, but the corruption of a people chosen by divine will. The seas themselves could become their grave. The blessing of the Valar was a fragile shield, and the longer men lived, the more they feared the limits of mortality. Their hubris, combined with envy and ambition, set the stage for a tragedy that could engulf not just their island, but the entire world. And while Númenor flourished, the first whispers of desire and fear quietly began to stir among its people. Númenor's story began as a gift from the Valar, a reward to men who had stood against Morgoth in the First Age. The island was placed far to the west of Middle-earth, untouched by the evils of the past, a paradise meant to be a bridge between mortals and the blessed lands of Aman. Its first leaders were wise and just, chosen for courage and honor, guiding their people with the principles of loyalty, service, and reverence for the divine. They built cities of shining stone, cultivated fertile lands, and mastered the sea, creating ships capable of crossing the Great Sea to Aman. Knowledge, art, and craftsmanship flourished. Trade, diplomacy, and exploration strengthened their influence, and their people lived long, prosperous lives under the watchful favor of the Valar. For centuries, Númenor stood as a shining example of what men could achieve when guided by wisdom rather than ambition, and the fear of mortality quietly took root. At the height of its power, Númenor was unmatched across Middle-earth. Cities of white stone gleamed in the sun. Towers and temples reflected both divine blessing and human ambition, and gardens stretched farther than the eye could see. Their fleets ruled the sea, exploring distant lands, establishing trade, and mapping coastlines unknown to others. Art, music, and scholarship flourished, and their libraries contained wisdom rivaling that of the Eldar. Alliances with neighboring realms strengthened their influence, while their people grew proud, confident, and certain of their invincibility. Long life, knowledge, and power made them feel above the limits of ordinary men. Every achievement reinforced the belief that Númenor could endure forever. The shadow of mortality crept silently into the hearts of Númenor's people. Beneath the shining towers and golden harbors, a quiet unease began to take root in Númenor. Though blessed with long lives, the men of the island realized that even they were not eternal. Their neighbors, the immortal elves, lived without end, their laughter untouched by decay, their wisdom stretching across ages. The contrast stirred envy, doubt, and fear. What was the value of greatness if it must inevitably fade? Scholars debated, nobles worried, and the hearts of ordinary folk ached with longing for a permanence they could never attain. This fear became a subtle poison. Even the wisest leaders struggled to temper the rising tension, knowing that unchecked, it could destabilize the very foundations of their society. The shadow of mortality became more than a thought. A cunning presence approached. Sauron arrived in Númenor under the guise of a scholar and advisor, speaking with calm authority and subtle persuasion. He promised knowledge, power, and even hints of immortality, exploiting the growing fear of mortality among the Númenorians. His words planted doubt in the hearts of kings and nobles alike, turning their envy of the immortal elves into resentment against the Valar themselves. Slowly, Sauron twisted pride into arrogance, loyalty into ambition, and devotion into defiance. Temples once dedicated to the Valar were abandoned or repurposed, and whispers of rebellion spread through the courts and cities. Leaders who had once guided their people wisely now entertained thoughts of conquest and immortality. By the time the first seeds of revolt took root, Númenor's paradise had already begun to decay from within. Growing hubris stood Ar-Pharazôn, ready to challenge the gods themselves. Ar-Pharazôn, the last and greatest king of Númenor, rose with unmatched ambition and pride. Blinded by Sauron's counsel and the fear of mortality, he grew convinced that the Valar were jealous of men's power, that they sought to limit what should be theirs by right. Rejecting warnings from sages and elders, he centralized authority, demanded absolute loyalty, and silenced dissent. Each decision deepened the divide between the gods and their chosen people. The seeds of catastrophe, sown by envy and deception, began to sprout into irreversible consequences. Advisors whispered of rebellion, heroes despaired at the arrogance of kings, and the island seemed restless under the weight of impending doom. Through hubris and defiance, Ar-Pharazôn did not merely challenge divine law. With pride guiding every action, Númenor's greatest king set sail for the forbidden shores of Aman. Ar-Pharazôn's armada, the largest Númenorian fleet ever assembled, set sail across the Great Sea, their banners bright and their hearts full of defiance. They aimed to conquer Aman itself. As the ships neared the sacred shores, the skies darkened and the winds rose in fury. The Valar, guardians of Aman, met the invaders with divine wrath. Waves swallowed ships whole, thunder tore through the ranks, and even the bravest soldiers faltered before the sheer force of the gods. Ar-Pharazôn's arrogance had crossed the ultimate boundary, and the rebellion of Númenor was now irreversibly exposed. The islanders had challenged the divine, and the consequences were immediate, terrifying, and total. Every decision that had led to this moment bore its weight upon the hearts of the proud and defiant. Númenor began to vanish beneath the wrathful seas. The seas rose with a force no mortal could withstand, swallowing the white towers, fertile plains, and proud harbors of Númenor. Mountains cracked, cities crumbled, and forests were torn from the land as waves consumed everything in their path. Fire and storm merged into a singular, unrelenting fury, leaving only despair in their wake. Thousands perished instantly. Kings and commoners alike swept into the abyss, while the proud fleets that had challenged Aman sank beneath the turbulent waters. Survivors clung to debris, drifting toward uncertain fates, their homes, families, and legacy erased in an instant. The island that had once gleamed as the pinnacle of men's achievement became a grave, a warning etched into the memory of Middle-earth. Even the echoes of Númenor's greatness, from its art to its wisdom, were submerged beneath the waves. Its destruction was absolute, tragic, and haunting, and though the island sank, the story of Númenor lived on in whispers. Númenor, once the crown jewel of men, vanished beneath the waves, its towers, temples, and fleets swallowed by the relentless sea. Paradise had been lost not to chance or fate, but to pride, fear, and the temptation of power. The Valar's mercy spared only a few faithful survivors who fled to Middle-earth carrying the legacy, knowledge, and sorrow of a fallen kingdom. The island's splendor, its culture, and its people became a memory, a warning of what happens when mortals challenge the divine and seek to escape their mortal limits. From the depths of the ocean, Númenor's story echoed through history, reminding all who would listen that greatness can be both fragile and fleeting. And the waves still whisper Númenor's name, a paradise that dared to defy the gods. Who do you blame most for the fall of Númenor? Sauron, the kings, or the people? Let me know in the comments.